Over the years, Harmonix has established themselves as one of the premier rhythm game developers in the games industry. They are highly acclaimed and have produced numerous successful rhythm games. Dance Central and Rock Band were both extremely popular series, and they're even still going today, producing new and innovative games like the recently released Fuser. And of course, Harmonix was the original developer of Guitar Hero before the game moved to Neversoft. They have an incredible ability to create and sustain new rhythm games, and even though the rhythm game market in the US has largely diminished from its peak popularity, they've not hesitated to be innovative over the years with new rhythm games. Indicative of that mentality all the way down to their core as a company, we take a trip all the way back to 2001 for the release of Harmonix's rhythm game, Frequency. Frequency is a rhythm game for the PS2 released on November 19th, 2001. It was developed by Harmonix and was actually the company's first major title. The game was published by Sony, but it was actually pitched to Microsoft first. When the game was pitched to Microsoft, Harmonix was told that a rhythm game would never succeed without a custom controller. This would lead Harmonix to work with Red Octane later on to make Guitar Hero, which wound up becoming a multi-billion-dollar franchise. The gameplay of Frequency is extremely unique and a bit confusing to look at, so I'll do my best to explain. The hit lane of Frequency is placed on one of the tracks at the start of the song. The gameplay field itself is comprised of 8 tracks arranged in an octagon and creating a sort of tunnel. Each of these tracks is actually part of the song you're playing, whether it's guitar, bass, drums, synth, vocals, etc. Playing notes on the track you're on will cause that part of the song to play. If you play enough of the track in a row, you'll capture it, which basically means that that part of the song will continue playing on its own. You can then switch left or right to another track and begin playing it. Combo is maintained if you're able to switch lanes and keep hitting notes without breaking your combo. Maintaining your combo will obviously result in more score, but will also cause more parts of the song to be played simultaneously as you continue playing the various lanes. It's a very cool and flashy gameplay style, and it really feels amazing to maintain your combo and piece the song together as the game plays. Frequency itself has a sort of early 2000s electronic trance music style with UI and visuals to match. A good amount of the music produced for the game was actually made by an at the time in-house member of Harmonix, Caston Crooker, who was formerly a member of the band Freeze Pop. That sort of synth-style music would permeate heavily throughout the game. Other notable artists in the first game are names like No Doubt, Powerman 5000, and Paul Oakenfold, but a lot of the music in Frequency was in-house. Frequency even had online play. It was one of the first games to use the PS2 network adapter. The way you would set this up was honestly pretty interesting. Online play wasn't actually packaged into the original game, but the demo version packaged with the network adapter did support online play. You could play the 4 songs in the demo version online via the network adapter, but if you loaded the demo disc and then swapped the main disc in, it let you play all the songs from the main game online as well. Honestly, this tech is super cool, and I sort of miss when online play was kinda gimmicky and required weird devices and setup. The online multiplayer supported up to 4 players. This sort of online play actually sounds pretty ahead of its time, and it's super cool that it had features like this. The online service has been since shut down many years ago, but it looks like there have been some minor efforts to get private servers working for the online play, so maybe in the future we'll be able to give this a try again. Although Frequency reviewed decently well, it didn't sell very well for the company. At the time, that didn't deter Harmonix too much, however, and they would begin work on a sequel. A few years later, out comes Amplitude, a direct sequel to Frequency, released on March 24th, 2003. This time around, the game was funded by Sony, and took more of a pop-rock music direction rather than the trance and synth-heavy direction of Frequency. That said, while the music choices were very different, the gameplay was largely the same. This time around, instead of a moving playfield, there was sort of a spaceship that the player controls on the tracks to give the game a bit more personality. A few minor presentation changes were made to make the game a bit more palatable as well. For example, the 8-lane tunnel was changed to be more of a sweeping, wide track. This was apparently done to fix the game feeling claustrophobic, though this change was apparently unpopular with some Frequency players since you can't see the other tracks quite as well. This game had the online mode supported within the game itself, and honestly, Amplitude supported a pretty stacked song list, especially for the time. You can definitely see the Sony money coming out in this one. POD, Run DMC, Weezer, David Bowie, Freeze Pop, Pink, Papa Roach, Slipknot, Blink-182, it's kind of packed full of big artists. Amplitude also reviewed well, but similarly to Frequency, it was not a financial success. It seemed to be a good game that was just not finding a market. Harmonix admitted in an interview that marketing the game at the time it was made was quite difficult. In 2003, a majority of the marketing material for games was in print media. As you'd expect, it's somewhat difficult to market a game with a bit of a confusing concept in print. It's a game much better attributed to a video demonstration, and they believed that it didn't help them very much when marketing the game. That said, in the same interview, Harmonix talked about how Amplitude was the game that gave them a positive reputation in the games industry and the confidence to keep making projects. You could definitely make the argument that the critical success of the game led them to get involved in Guitar Hero and other projects, even if Frequency and Amplitude were not financial successes. From here, the series would go dormant for 13 years, but it wasn't done yet. In May of 2014, a Kickstarter from Harmonix appeared for a reboot of Amplitude. It was advertised to have the same sweeping landscape gameplay of 2003's Amplitude, although it did also have a setting you could enable to get the frequency tunnel back. The game was funded by a Kickstarter both because of the game's niche status, but also because it was a chance for Harmonix to test using crowdfunding for more projects in the future. This was during the boom of crowdfunding sites, so this isn't exactly that unexpected. It was a tight finish, but the Kickstarter was funded within 24 hours of the deadline and went into production. The game was developed only for PlayStation consoles, despite not being published by Sony, since Sony owns the rights to Amplitude. The game also facilitated the development of a new engine at Harmonix known as Forge, which actually ended up being used for Rock Band 4. A few years later, on January 5th, 2016, the game released for PS4. The game was essentially a reboot of Amplitude with modern graphics and a more futuristic, space-like theme. The spaceships from Amplitude were retained, and the song list was largely produced in-house again, similar to Frequency. It did have a few feature artists like C418, Danny Baranowski, and Freeze Pop, but the sheer star power seen in 2003's Amplitude was sorely missing, and it might have shown a little bit in the reviews. The reviews for the game were middling, some citing the song list, others mentioning the lack of content as the game only had 30 songs. It seems Amplitude and Frequency were just doomed to not market well, both back when they originally released and when the game was rebooted. With a middling reception Kickstarter game and no indication of a sequel to the reboot, the series has gone dormant. There's a few reasons why we probably won't see Amplitude or Frequency again. As you've probably seen throughout the video, the game was always pretty niche and never sold well. Even though it was always received well by the fans, it never seemed to capture a larger market. I'm sure that's partially due to the confusing gameplay that's sort of difficult to understand. Explaining it is pretty confusing, and it doesn't really look intuitive, but ironically, once you play the game, you'll probably understand it right away. This kind of scenario makes a game like this very hard to market. Compare Amplitude to something like Guitar Hero, where it can be explained as simply as, it's like playing guitar. It was an uphill battle in that sense. I do also wonder if the game never really grabbed a larger audience because of a lack of personality. The game certainly had a style, and its song lists usually reflected that, but it didn't really have flashy character appeal or anything like that. I know they added the ships in Amplitude to remedy that a little bit, but it's not even close to something like Guitar Hero that at least had some original characters throughout the franchise. There's been no indication of future games in the franchise, and honestly, with the history of the series' sales, I would be surprised if Harmonix bothered with another entry in the franchise at this point. Personally, I'm totally in the boat of the fans of this game. It's a really fun and unique rhythm game, and once you give it a try, in my experience, it sticks right away. It would be really cool if someone eventually makes a sim for this game's gameplay. I think the game still had a lot of potential and could find some fans with some player-made content. It was an experimental but influential series for Harmonix, and for now, joins our list of dead rhythm games. Thanks for watching. Check out my Twitter and my Twitch, links are in the description below. You can also check out my Patreon if you want to support my content. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.